Ahoy! One of the things that I highly recommend doing in preparation for next season is farming PvP track if you are in the right range. However, the big question is, how do you actually effectively farm PvP track now? Because any information that I could find on that online is outdated due to the values being changed so often. As such, I wanted to test that and look through the files as well to verify some things in order to make sure that I can tell you what is actually the most efficient way to both farm track and salt in particular, because Azoth salt is what you often end up short with. I'm also going to give you a nice trick later in the video to save 50,000 Azoth salt. Before I give you an overview, a quick explanation as to why I think it's worth farming at the moment and who should be doing it. There is a specific range between 50 and 100 PvP track where you have an increased rate of artifact drops. This doesn't seem fully intentional because the rate before that is lower on purpose, but after 100 track it also drops off again, which doesn't really make sense. As such, I think it's highly likely that these drop rates will be adjusted, which could result in the drop rate being lower between 50 to 100 than it currently is. So if you're either close to 50, so lower than 50, or between 50 and 100, then I believe it is worth farming right now. The drop rates are so good that you can even skip the artifacts that you don't want right away and just go one track further or two tracks further, and you will have another artifact yet again. What we're going to compare are the Great Cleave PvP missions, the fort or control points that you can capture, Outpost Rush, both win and loss, capture the flag, arena before the daily cap, as well as mentioning influence races and open world kills. If you're interested in more prep videos, by the way, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you want to have advanced trading tips as well, then consider supporting me on Patreon. The first activity we'll look at here is Outpost Rush, which I think is the most basic PvP mode that New World has. There are a few different conditions in Outpost Rush. You can have a win or you can have a loss, but the win scales in rewards depending on how many points you contributed, how much score you contributed. And the same thing applies for loss as well. If your score contributed is too low, then you will not get the full reward. We will primarily focus on results where you're getting enough score, but I will make the example for Outpost Rush specifically of a too low score as well. So the maximum reward that you can get in Outpost Rush in terms of salt, if you win with maxed out score, which is 3000 score, not that hard to reach, is 5500 salt. Along with that, you also get 3500 XP. Keep in mind that Outpost Rush values are pretty high in comparison to other modes because they were buffed a while ago after Arena was too rewarding for a while, and now it's kind of the other way around where Outpost Rush is just a bit too rewarding. So if these numbers look big, it's because they are. I assumed for this mode a time of roughly 30 minutes. It depends a lot on your server, how long the queue takes, and the match itself can obviously go longer or shorter than that. But I looked at the longer end of matches, and I did this for every single one of these activities, seeing how much time it would take if you're a bit more unlucky. And then I used that to calculate the amount of salt and XP you get per minute. For a win in Outpost Rush, that would be 183 salt and 117 XP per minute, which is our baseline now. Anything else basically needs to match up to that to be useful. If we lose in Outpost Rush, the situation shifts a little bit because we only get 3250 salt and 2800 XP. This would result in 108 salt per minute and 93 XP per minute. So roughly half for the salt, not that much of a hit for the XP. Similarly, if we actually lose with a bad score, so we have less than 3000 score, and we are only getting the minimum reward, then we would get 500 salt and 2000 XP. The salt at this point is not worth talking about with 17 salt per minute, but the XP is still pretty good with 67 XP per minute, or at least it's not completely awful, let's put it that way. Problem is, the artifacts cost 50,000 Azoth salt, so typically track progression is not your problem in the first place. Typically you want salt more than XP, unless you're still working your way towards track 50. Our next contender is Capture the Flag. Note that for this and Arena, I had to get values from other people and from the game files. Thanks to Finch for sending me that, because unfortunately those modes don't really pop in AP at the moment. As such, these values should be correct, but I couldn't personally verify them in-game. So for Capture the Flag specifically, it has a value assigned to it, but it also has an override that gives it the same value, which is really confusing. In Outpost Rush case, the override just increases the values because it's probably using old values. Like I said, that value was changed a while ago, but Capture the Flag doesn't make sense to me. However, what we're getting here is 1,100 salt for a win with the highest possible score and 1,350 XP. That would result in 100 salt per minute and 123 XP per minute. Since the salt is so much lower and the XP is just ever so slightly higher, I don't think that is worth it. This assumes an 11-minute time, so barely even factors in a queue really. Basically just the mode being played as normal, even though there is the option for it to end early as well. For a loss, we are getting almost the same amount, so 1075 salt or 98 salt per minute and 925 XP or 84 per minute. So even for a loss, we are likely getting less than for Outpost Rush. Maybe there's something I'm overlooking with Capture the Flag, maybe there's a bonus that I couldn't find, but as far as I can tell, it is kind of just worse across the board when it comes to farming, so it's really more if you enjoy the mode more from what I can tell. And then we have Arena. And these are just the values for Arena before the daily cap is reached. After the daily cap, the values drop down. Although I think it takes quite a few matches. I actually forgot how many matches it takes exactly, but it's not that easy to reach daily cap. You really have to spam arenas. And as such, we're going to focus on what we're getting here. And I did an assumption here for a win of 3 rounds, because that is basically the ideal circumstance. And then a loss of every single round. You obviously have conditions in between, and depending on what kind of amount of wins or losses you have, these values will shift. Again, we're just focusing on the extremes here. For a win in 4 minutes, if you're literally just stomping over the opposition in an arena match with minimal Q and everything, you'd get 500 salt, pretty low value, so that results in 125 salt per minute. So even if you're really, really stomping, you're still getting less than in an Outpost Rush win at least. The XP, however, is 1,500, which results in 375 XP. So if you're very good at the game and you have a team that has very high damage, then this is a good way to farm XP. However, most people who are experienced enough and skilled enough and geared enough to do all that probably don't need to farm PvP track anymore in the first place because they're probably already there. On the other hand, if we took the same match but it would take longer to win, and we say it's like an 8-minute match, then you'd get 63 salt per minute and 188 XP per minute, which may sound good so far, but we'll get to some more other results. On a loss, you get 250 salt. I once again assumed 8 minutes here, which is 31 salt per minute, and you would get 94 XP per minute. So overall, definitely still a good mode for XP at least. How good exactly depends on how efficient you are and also how long your queue times are, which I think is a big problem with any calculation here in particular that we've done so far, because depending on your queue time, your efficiency can go down significantly, and on many servers, Outpost Rush will just pop significantly quicker. And that brings us to the one thing that you can always do, but that is a lot more tedious and less fun in my opinion, which are Great Cleave missions. For that, you just go to the fort on the right side of Great Cleave and you talk to your faction guy and you pick up all the 3 PvP missions and you do them on a loop. It takes 5 minutes for the missions to reset, so even if you do it faster, you're gonna have to wait anyway, so I just put 5 minutes as the time for that. While there is a faction token bonus for the first 3 missions per day, so they're worth doing for that, those bonuses don't affect the salt and XP from what I found. As such, the salt that you're getting for handing in 3 missions is always 600, resulting in 120 salt per minute. The XP that you're getting is 1050. This results in 210 XP per minute. So our salt rate is significantly worse than a win in Outpost Rush, but slightly better than a loss, and it doesn't have any downtime. Along with that, the XP rate is almost double that of Outpost Rush, so along with Arena, this is definitely the best way to farm and a lot more consistent than Arena as well, because if you're losing an Arena, then you are basically putting yourself behind very quickly. But this value can be enhanced. And that's because there are a lot of people running missions in that area. Now, generally, there is an unspoken consensus that you shouldn't fight in that area because everyone is just running it for the salt and XP. However, what you can do if you don't want to ruin someone else's day is just talk to them and ask them nicely if after 20 minutes or so of farming the missions, they want to just trade a kill. In other places, this may sometimes be frowned upon, but this is just a mindless farm, so when everyone benefits from that by simply getting significantly more salt, I don't think all too many people are going to be bothered by it. Depending on how long those players have been alive, they can give well above 2,000 salt, and you will give them the same amount, so just respawn at a camp and you're done. Of course, you can also just do regular PvP there and grab the people that have been farming, but you're gonna make a lot more enemies and you're likely gonna slow down your own progress as well if they pull up with some friends. If you're able to find just one person to do this with, you will almost double the salt that you're getting per minute, at which point this easily becomes the most efficient farm. Personally, I believe the most effective grind is one that doesn't make you lose your mind, so I probably do Great Cleave missions, maybe kill someone in between and queue for OPR while I'm doing it, so whenever there's an OPR I can hop into that and maximize my farm and my fun at the same time. There is also the fort or control point option. This one is really not worth talking about. As you can see, it's only 300 salt for roughly 10 minutes of capture, as well as 1000 XP. So even if you do this with a lot of people, you do it quick or whatever, it's still not going to be worth it because it's just 300 salt. Now there's another method that people used to use, but I think at this point it is really only worth it if you're very desperate for salt, you really hate PvP, or you're just absolutely loaded with gold, because you can technically craft infused alkahest in particular for XP at a camp while flagged. This gives you regular XP, and every 10,000 regular XP converts into, I think, 1,500 Azoth salt. Depending on the economy of your server and how much you can sell back, this can be more or less effective. So there are situations where this could be useful, but you're definitely sinking a significant amount of gold into this first in order to make it work. So do the calculations for yourself based on your server's values if you think this might be worth it. For me, I considered it not worth it enough compared to just doing a regular farm. Now, as promised, there's also a way to save 50,000 Azoth salt that may not be around forever. And that is because Heseta exists. And as you can see here, Heseta drops from the PvP reward track. However, it can also drop from a different location. And that is from Parthenocissus, who is an angry earth mob, a little boss mob who sits at the top of Restless Shore in that elite area. Some of you may remember this area. That's where the ironwood trees are that you kind of need to chop down in order to get in. There's a little side path that you can use to chop down some easier trees instead, and you're not really aggroing any mobs along the way, or rather you lose all the mobs on the trail, and then you can get directly to this boss, and you can turn left when you enter the room, and there's a little wall you can climb on to reset mobs, or you can go behind the boss and reset the mobs. So you can get in there pretty easily, but I will warn you, this mob doesn't have much health, but it's kind of misleading because it has 2 adds with them, 2 shamans, and they are an absolute headache to deal with, and I actually decided to not do this solo because I found it too annoying with my not so geared character. If you have a perfectly maxed out life-stealing build with Voidblade or something, you can probably make it happen. It's not impossible, but if you want to make it easy and convenient, then I would go there with another person because it just makes the job so much easier. Just have one person tank and the other one heal a bit and deal damage. It should be easy enough to find a healer to do this with you anyways, because a lot of healers will probably want to have this life staff. Who knows what they're going to do to the perks of this in the next season. The boss respawns within roughly 6 minutes, so it doesn't take all too long to farm, considering you're usually getting artifacts within around 5 kills by now. If you found these tips helpful and useful, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Good luck with your salt farm. Hopefully you get a lot of artifacts before the next season. And if you'd like to support me further and get prep tips, then consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons who are doing exactly that, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.